Okay, this is a rather difficult story to explain. My dad, when I was 5 years old, we moved to California and we bought some property, and it was cheap. And the next door neighbors were what we called the Mexicans. Okay, and the original people who lived there we were friends with, but then like the sister of our good neighbors, she said she was growing up like around the same time, but I didn't really associate with them. They just never responded at all. And like a few years after we moved in there, maybe 10 years after we moved in there, they had a son. They both had daughters, and then they both had sons. And I was friends with my good friend's friend, and we're good friends. Okay, we partied a bit, but anyways, the son of the other people who wasn't even born when we moved in there turns into this total psychopath who doesn't care if there's terrorism at all. Las Vegas shooting is like a day at the office for him. Anyways, my dad, he buys this property, I think because the CIA Superman connection. Okay, the photos of him are uncanny, and this is JFK, Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. JFK is Irish, in case if you're not making the connection. And the question is the responsibility. You know, you can find this attractive characters like George Washington, who incidentally wrote some very interesting books in his topography, in his land drafting. And someone saw it and they said, "Oh my God, I gotta publish this." You know, and George Washington, I don't think he got paid, so he was desperate for prosperity, and he was doing anything to do it, and it divided the world. Okay, my dad, he didn't get paid for looking exactly like Superman at the exact same time, just before that, and we went to Vietnam. Okay, so we spent exponentially more fighting a scapegoat across the ocean than it would have cost to give my dad or George Washington the prosperity that they need and deserve. They ultimately, genuinely deserve this, and we do not deserve to go to war. Okay, this is fundamental. And for me, it's ET phone home, okay? There's a photograph I released with great hesitation, in despair, because I was not finding any prosperity. So I posted this photo of myself as a 10-year-old on social media, on Facebook, a week before Michael Jackson died. I did it again before Prince, and it's this complete desperation. And I'm telling people, like, and they just will not respond. So if we went to war in the Middle East, they would not respond. They'd rather we spend exponential money than simply to pay off our actual heroes, our spokesmen, our founding fathers, okay, our messiahs, okay? Don't make them do stupid things, desperate things like Kurt Cobain or Jim Morrison, and be desperados. And my dad, he's not, incidentally, Jim Morrison sounds a lot like Tim Moriarty, okay? The names have an uncanny similarity. They're both Irish, they're both growing up in the time of JFK. Okay, it just happens that Jim Morrison's on the frontier, and he's got a little sister, okay, and he's quite the showstopper, absolutely. My dad he's much more sort of responsible, culturally sort of gregarious. He traveled around the world a couple of times, twice as a teenager. This is very difficult to quantify. I would not be making videos and audio recordings, except that I'm desperate. Okay, I need a place to compose. I need an absolutely private, absolutely quiet, private place. I don't mind if hearing some intelligent girl laughing in the distance. That doesn't bother me at all. You could have conversations galore, but it's when you hear machines and sort of unintelligent people and undesirable people and distractions, cultural distractions, whatever it is, just mechanized derailment. This is the singularity, where you allow someone who's not qualified to interfere. And the person who is qualified, you avoid responsibility, you avoid their prosperity. Okay, that will create terrorism, absolutely, and war and environmental destruction. It's like a sequence. First, it's like war, then it's, it's manifest destiny. It's all these environmental derangements. Again, it's very complex. It needs to be composed, edited, researched, rewritten. It has to be written many times, and I'm not able to do that with a smartphone because I just can't write fast enough on a touch screen. Okay, it's just not happening. I need serious financial resources so that I can get it right, so I can be responsible, and so that we don't have these endless trillion-dollar wars in the Middle East. This is the equation. Okay, you give George Washington enough money so he can buy a house on every continent, or you spend enough money to destroy civilization. Okay, destroy cultures, destroy classy technological possibilities, okay, or to pervert them and degenerate them and lead them into drugs and pornography and this sort of sick, sort of we don't care mentality. You have to care about the George Washington, otherwise you are un-American and you are causing destruction to the nation. Okay, it used to be America and Britain were the same, but you sort of say, well, here's something interesting, and we don't care about them. We're just going to wave them around and do some poverty game, and we don't care if the world, if technology becomes perverted. If everyone starts thinking tobacco and sugar, that's the new god that we're going to worship. We're not going to have anyone, any Herculean reality. Okay, a messenger, whatever cultural grasp that we can have, okay, even if it is that sort of falsetto there. But if we don't have that, we're going to have war and terrorism. Okay, you have to give George Washington the prosperity so that he can not seek out some cheap land out between a rock and a hard place on Dawn's Highway on the frontier, but so that he can buy a castle where Catherine the Great can come and have tea, okay? Yeah, so that you can work on world peace. It's utterly important. Yeah, so my dad, he buys this land. It's really cheap, and I think it was because the neighbors, and I think it's because the neighbors were leaning towards criminal sort of behavior or something like that. And I think it's because his soul was stolen by the CIA. Okay, this is. Do you want to go to war? Is the Vietnam War, is that all part of the plan? So like, oh yeah, we meant to do that to, create a massive drug problem in America, to drop landmines all over there, create havoc, spend billions of dollars telling Donald Trump that George Washington is the enemy. Okay, telling JFK that Frank Sinatra is the enemy. So we go to war instead of him entertaining someone who needs help, who needs prosperity, okay, and needs an emotionally secure world to romance, indeed, to find the love, to make sure it's really world love, not world peace, global peace, world love. You can have that through these characters, but they cannot be virtual people. You have to have the actual person. This is why the American Revolution happened. They wanted virtual representation for the taxes that we pay. And the Founding Fathers said, no, we want actual representation. If you pretend like you're George Washington, you're going to create war and terrorism. Okay, it's like the Middle East is constantly at war because they don't want to acknowledge the inspiration behind Superman, the modern one, the JFK modern Superman, or indeed me. Okay, E.T. phone home. It's all like you think it was a joke. This is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Okay. Schizophrenic. Okay, so it's just, I'm telling you guys, I'm just trying to snap some shape into you. I'm like, there's like a pile of socks there, and it looks like a restroom where George Michaels would hang out at. And it's like, this is really disgusting. This is And they think, oh yeah, just go to war. I'll be the loser so you can go to war, so the whole world can go to war, develop these drug problems. It's gotta be a joke. It's true. It's absolutely true. George Washington, a real person who was virtually represented by his writing, but not compensated, and that's why we went to war, because he struggled for prosperity. Okay, my dad too, he looks just like Superman, and there is valid data here. And again, with E.T., Steven Spielberg, do you want war in the Middle East? Because I think a lot of people, they do want that. They want to see us reality deranged. Okay, they want royalty to become drug addicts. That's what they want. Okay, some people never learn. They're making distractions, destruction. They are destroyers. They are trying to sodomize rhinoceros. Okay, Donald Trump, I'm sure, laugh at that. Okay. And find a nice female rhinoceros who knows how to make a cake. This is true, you guys. If you do not, our founding fathers demanded actual representation. Okay, so people, not virtual, not a facsimile, not a pretend representative, a plastic Jesus, a pornographic messenger, but the real deal, the real responsibility that people are going to see and understand. Okay, the reality, not the fantasy, because that's what happens with wars. People are doing psychotic, crazy things. Okay, because they don't have a real messenger to enforce responsibility, to demonstrate responsibility, to be there amongst other responsible people. You must make this feasible, otherwise we will have perpetual war. They will degenerate the world. Okay, so they can make some stupid movie. And this started off with Charlie Chaplin. George Washington had some very good writing, which got published. As a matter of fact, it was published. And so the world would have seen this. GPS would have allowed it to go around the world. And references would have come back, say, well, who is this guy? And they say, oh, he's this big guy who grew up there, and he's got a little sister. We see him. Yeah, I saw him. And sort of people could make more and more descriptive things. But without the reality, we're headed to war. And it's destroying reality, destroying God. Okay? Jesus is the King of Kings. He is the most responsible person there could ever be. And if you do not want that in reality, then we're going to have war, terrorism, drugs, degeneration, sex and drugs, and lack of responsibility, lack of loving our neighbors, because we can't afford to live next to the people who are of our caliber. Okay? If you make that specifically the objective and say, let's just have that, let's just give George Washington a castle in every country, or at least a room, a nice quiet one where he can compose, you'll have world peace.